Now, answer the following questions. So, we have got some question answers from this lesson. Okay. So, we need to do that. Why are polar regions very cold? So, we learned that Greenland lies in the polar belt and the climatic conditions are also polar climatic conditions. It's very cold. So, why is it very cold? The polar regions are very far away from the equator. That is the first and foremost reason. Okay. So, as it is very far away from the equator, what happens? Therefore, they receive the very slanting rays of the sun even in summer. So, around the equator, we get a straight falling sun rays, but towards the pole, slanting sun rays, which is not at all heat. Which doesn't have much heat or which is not at all very hot. So, they are very cold regions. So, the reason is polar regions are very far away from the equator and where the sun rays fall in a slantings, not in a straight line, right? That is the reason. What are icebergs? Why are sailors afraid of them? What are icebergs? The very big floating piece of ice is called an iceberg. Okay, the huge ice pieces which get separated from the land falls into the ocean and floats in the ocean are called icebergs. If a ship hits an iceberg, it may wreck and sink because the iceberg is much bigger below the surface of the sea water than it appears on the surface. We have seen that in the picture also, isn't it? Isn't it? Yeah, the amount of ice of an iceberg that we can see above the water is very less, whereas below the water is very big. We cannot see that. So, when a ship goes and hit this iceberg, the bottom part of the ship will be totally damaged by the huge mass of ice under the water. Right? And so, the ships can wreck or sink. So, the sailors are afraid of them. We cannot understand how much ice is there below the water. That is why the sailors are afraid of icebergs. So, how is the climate of Greenland? The climate of Greenland is very cold throughout the year because it has polar climatic conditions. Right? So, why are the polar regions very cold? The polar regions are very far away from the equator. Therefore, they receive the very slanting rays of sun even in summer. So, they are very cold. 2. What are icebergs? Why are sailors afraid of them? The very big floating piece of ice is called an iceberg. If a ship hits an iceberg, it may wreck and sink it because the iceberg is much bigger below the surface of the seawater than it appears on the surface. So, the sailors are afraid of them. How is the climate of Greenland? The climate of Greenland is very cold throughout the year. So, these are the first 3 questions in the set of question answers we have in this lesson. So, I will keep the screen the same for another minute so that we can read these questions once again before we go into the next set of questions, right? Okay. So now we have the second set of questions. Fourth question. Why is Greenland called the land of midnight sun? So in summers, the sun shines brightly all the 24 hours in most part, even at midnight. That is why Greenland is called the land of midnight sun. So we have already seen that the winters are long, and during winters the polar region is kept away from the sunlight. Okay, away from the sun. So during summer season, the slanting rays of sun can be seen even during the midnight time. And that is why it is called the land of midnight sun. What are the main occupations of the people of the Greenland? Hunting, fishing and fish exports are the major occupations of the people of Greenland. They hunt animals, fishing and fish processing and exporting. Carrying the fish and exporting are the major occupations. How is the Eskimos' lifestyle changing? So towards the end of the lesson, we have seen that it's changing. Lifestyle is changing in Greenland. So how is it changing? Many of Eskimos have shifted to small towns. Now they have permanent houses with electricity. Primary schools, hospitals, shops, clubs have been established. They have begun to use rifles and motorized sledges called the skidoo. So earlier we know that Eskimos were wandering communities. They wandered from one place to other, hunting food and all, isn't it? Now they have shifted to small towns. There are some small towns being established on different regions. They have permanent house. They do not live in the igloos anymore. Primary education, hospitals, shops, clubs, etc. are established. They have begun to use rifles. Earlier they used harpoons, isn't it? Now they are using rifles and motorized sledges like skidoos are also now used by them. Right? Okay. So why is Greenland called the land of midnight sun? In summers, the sun shines brightly all the 24 hours in most part, even at midnight. That is why Greenland is called the land of midnight sun. What are the main occupations of the people of the Greenland? Hunting, fishing and fish exports are the major occupations of the people of Greenland. How is the Eskimos' lifestyle changing? Many of Eskimos have shifted to small towns. Now they have permanent houses with electricity. Primary schools, hospitals, shops, clubs have been established. They have begun to use rifles and motorized sledges like skidoos. Right? So now I will keep the screen the same for another minute. You can read these sentences, these question answers once again. Read it loud, read it thorough. Right? Project or activity is the next one. Collect the pictures of the animals found in Greenland and paste them in your scrapbook. So we have seen that plenty of animals are seen there, like reindeers are there, caribous are there, Arctic fox, then musk ox, Arctic jackals are seen there, then walrus, seals, whales, then Arctic hares are there, Arctic owls are there. Plenty of animals are there, right? So here we have done it as an example. Yes, Arctic eagle, fox, then reindeer, Arctic hare, seal, musk ox, polar bear, caribou, seal. Plenty of animals are there. Okay, so you can collect these pictures either from some newspapers or magazines, or you can Google it also. Okay. Second question and activity. On the basis of the reading of the lesson, make a project comparing the lifestyles of Eskimos of modern times with their primitive lifestyle in the following concepts. So how were they different in the food, in shelter and occupation? So now we need to compare the Eskimos in the olden days to with that of the present days in the aspects of food. So what kind of food did they eat in the olden days? What kind of food do they eat now? Shelter. Where did they live in the olden days? Where do they live now? Occupation. What did they do in the olden days and what are they doing now? Right? Yes. See, food. The primitive lifestyle was a raw food. Means what? They hunt some animal, split it open, eat raw flesh as it is. Right? But now, yeah, there are some regions still where they eat raw food, but processed food also. Means what? Cooked food are also eaten by the people now. Shelter. In the olden days, there were only igloos. Right? There were no other settlements. Right? So in the olden days, they lived only in igloos, but now they have igloos and permanent settlements also. There are permanent houses also built by these people to live in that. Occupation in the olden days was mostly on hunting and fishing. There was no other occupation for the people, but nowadays they do hunting, fishing, fish processing, exporting, tourism, mining. Plenty of minerals are found there, so mining is an occupation. Agriculture also is an occupation. Okay, during the short summer period, when they get the land seed, they do some cultivations, right? So, food in the primitive lifestyle was a raw food. In the present day, they eat a raw food and processed food. Shelter, they lived in igloo in the olden days, and in the present day life, they live in igloos and permanent buildings. Occupation. The primitive lifestyle was hunting and fishing, and now hunting, fishing, fish processing, exporting, tourism, mining, agriculture, etc. are done by the people over there. Okay. So now I will keep this screen the same for another minute for you so that you can go through the table once again, right? So that is what we have got about Greenland. We have completed the lesson and the exercise part of this lesson. So in the next class, we will meet again with another lesson. So till then, stay home, stay safe. Bye.